All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, after many technical issues and a very patient guest waiting on the other end, we finally got a show for you. Lots going on right now in the news. Argentina just elected a new president, a libertarian, a hardcore libertarian. Some say even an anarchist, someone that would align very strongly with much of your beliefs. So it's going to be very interesting to see if this strategy works. Will Javi Milei be able to take a chainsaw to the administrative state and hack and slash and roll back taxes and get off the central banking and bring some liberty to the people of Argentina? Is that the path to liberty? Well, my next guest might have something to say about that. He's taken a slightly different approach. Please welcome Mark, founder of the New Brunswick Free Province Project. Did I get that right, Mark?
Oh, you just garbled there a bit. I think you said founder of the New Brunswick Free Province Project.
That's right.
Okay, yeah. You know what? What an interesting election, isn't it? But I think your comment, I think probably your last one that you put up on Twitter just this morning was, we'll see if this works or not, and it may end up proving that just merely electing the right person or even party is not going to work. And I've said that for a long time. I think far too many Canadians, we'll just talk in a Canadian context, I think far too many Canadians believe in a top-down solution. If we can only get Danielle Smith elected, if we could only get Maxime Bernier or Pierre Poilievre, he's going to save us. So Canadians are very much into political saviors, and that our project takes the exact opposite approach, is that freedom comes from building a culture of freedom, and it's a ground-up process. Now, it gets a lot easier if you have somebody up there who's taken the chainsaw to all of your enemies. I mean, that's great. But his problem is, I think he doesn't. I don't think he has a real majority in the Senate. I think it is. I was just looking at that. He's going to have to work with other parties. And I think what he's probably going to end up getting is the Trump treatment, because they're going to try and destroy him at all costs. Like he's in for hell, political hell from crazy people who don't want to see it succeed, even though their country is a complete shambles. I think he's going to be in for some real problems. But of course, I wish him well. I was hoping Bitcoin would jump, but it hasn't really moved that much since the election was announced. Little spike up and down. So
yeah,
anyway,
that's a good point. Well, and yeah, you're right, Mark. I mean, we see this, with all politicians who have ideas of rolling back the state even a little bit, right? Like right now in Alberta, where I'm at, Danielle Smith has announced health reforms, and they're very modest in terms of what I would like to see. I'd like to see a legalized healthcare. I'd love to be able to start a healthcare business. My whole family are healthcare providers, but the only employer I can work for is the government. I mean, that's written into Canadian law. Now, Danielle Smith's reforms are breaking up the monopoly that Alberta Health Services has, and the government is going to contract directly with a bunch of different providers. It's going to decentralize a little bit, and it's going to cause some pains initially. I think in the long term there'll be marginal improvements in the system, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be a panacea. It's not going to, and there are going to be some negative consequences of this as well. There's going to be some inefficiencies. There's going to be, and her detractors and the detractors of the idea of private healthcare are going to jump all over that and point out to say, and they're going to say, see, this is why we can't have, the government has to be in charge of everything, and why it needs to be, everything in the state, nothing outside the state, sort of thing. And as soon as we have a failure, this is what happens. And of course, Javi Milei and, whoever the next president of the United States is, let's say it's, it's a freedom loving guy like Vivek Ramaswamy or even Trump, uh, who might have some ideas of rolling back the state. Well, we know that the economy is on the verge of collapse, central banking, and of course, freedom is going to get blamed for that, and people are going to immediately vote the other way, right? The only reason people are voting Habby isn't because they are, let's say, cultural libertarians or ideological libertarians, or they've accepted the arguments that undergird the philosophy of freedom. It's because they have been exposed to leftist destructive policies for so long, and they're like, we got to try something different. This is the same thing in Canada. We've been exposed to Trudeau for too long, and he's locked us down. And so we see a rise in populism and anti-establishment. But the seeds of the establishment are still there, even in the populists that say, "Look, we need the government to come in and strong arm all our enemies and do all these things." So it's not necessarily that people are embracing the philosophy of liberty, but they're, in a sense, Trudeau is they want Trudeau out. They want something different, and so we'll see something different for a while, and things will be disastrous still because the underlying things, so it's just we see the swing back and forth, and I think you get it. I mean, so let's talk about your solution to this. I find it very interesting. I'm guessing that you've kind of I only Mark found out about this in the last couple of days. Someone reached out to me from your I guess endeavor there and said, "Hey, you got to talk to Mark. This is what's going on here." Last time I heard about the Free Province Project was maybe 10 years ago when there was a group of people trying to take over PEI or trying to muster some support to take over PEI, and that seemed to make sense to me. They're tagging on to the Free State Project in New Hampshire and seeing the success they're having there, and makes a lot of sense. But you tell me in your words, what's going on? Why New Brunswick? Why not PEI? What are you trying to do exactly? What's your plan?
Well, we got some sound issues going on there, but I'll try and talk and see how much of it comes across. You got a whole lot of stuff right there. We look at if we compare. Are you hearing me okay?
I'm hearing you just fine, Mark. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you hearing me okay?
I'm hearing you just fine. Yep.
Okay.
That's okay. We can hear you.
Well,
I'm recording on my
let's
end,
just
so
see where we
keep
go.
going.
First, yeah, okay, fair enough. It was just breaking up pretty bad. Um, yeah, lot to unpack there. Danielle Smith. Here's the lady who let Sheila Lewis die. Could have saved her with the stroke of a pen, but she's the freedom solution. She's talking about how, with these climate goals, we can't meet them by 2030. She's not saying this is all nonsense. We ain't doing that. She's saying, well, we got to meet them by 2050, and it brings to mind this idea, this saying that our liaison with the New Hampshire Free State Project, Derek Crew, said to me, which I thought was profound. He said, conservatives are just like liberals driving the speed limit. You're still going over the cliff, but you're going to get there a little bit later, right? And so that's who she is. There are 140,000 people, fewer people voted in the last Alberta election, okay? Because I tracked this. I did a whole article on nbfree.ca called, all about this, about why Alberta probably is not going to be the freedom solution for the foreseeable future. Why? After everything Trudeau's and the federal feds have done to Alberta, after having survived a ruinous NDP government, 140,000 people, fewer people came out to vote in the last provincial election. The Conservative, the UCP lost 14 seats. The NDP gained 14 seats, and the NDP also gained, I forget what it was, like almost 100,000 new voters. And so what it means is you have way, way, way too many communists in Alberta to be right now to make secession for sure possible. You're never going to get to the threshold, whatever that threshold is, because the Supreme Court doesn't set a number, but you're probably good. You're probably going to need 70% to get secession. Not even close. Never going to happen in my lifetime. I wish it was like, don't confuse my statements for being wishes. I wish Alberta could be the freedom solution and secede tomorrow. I see no national political or legal solution to this, to Canada. I think Canada is over. And I say that as somebody who was a member of the Canadian Forces and I was a former peacekeeper. I've been to jail 5 times defending the Charter of Rights in Caledonia, Ontario. One of my teammates, with the work that we did beforehand, won a 9-0 Supreme Court of Canada decision against the Ontario Provincial Police, the Ontario government, who are arresting innocent people instead of arresting violent people. Okay, so I was a patriot. I am not now. I think Canada is over. And there are a number of reasons for that. All you have to do is look at. I just looked this morning before I had some time. 338canada.com. 97% of Canadians support woke socialist parties, and I include in that the CPC. They are woke. They are as woke as the Liberal Party of Canada, maybe a little bit less. Okay, and I think you know all the reasons why I would say that. That things will definitely get a little bit better, but most people are in Canada, I'm sorry, are socialists. They lean socialist, they're going to vote socialist. So there's no national political solution to this. Now, if we look at the legal solution possible, those doors have now been closed. Clearly, Supreme Court has rejected bodily autonomy. They wouldn't even hear Sheila Lewis's appeal. They turned down the appeal from the Aylmer Church of God. Religious freedom is gone. What was the other thing? It's just clear that no federal court in Canada is ever going to provide justice to unvaccinated people. And it means that the Charter of Rights are it's a charter of imaginary rights now, and our rights are whatever the government says they are. There are no absolute rights anymore. I don't think people realize how dangerous Canada actually is right now. And every day it's something else that clearly there's not going to be any legal solution. So there's only the only proven solution that I've seen so far that we're trying to emulate with the New Brunswick Free Province Project, nbfree.ca, is duplicating what the New Hampshire Free State people have done. FSP.org. You can watch a video from our liaison with them, Derek Prue there. There's links on there to them. The Free State Project, for those who don't know, basically had this idea. Rather than libertarians fighting, losing elections all over America, what if we concentrated them all in one small state and took political control? So that was 20 years ago. Jason Sorens came up with that idea, wrote a paper. And I was at PorcFest, which is their porcupine festival this summer. And boy, that was a mind blower. So, and I did a debate on Canada and should we have a similar project in Canada or in other states and stuff with their chef de village, Dennis Pratt. Anyways, 1 week of freedom, 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 baby. And I got to hear Vivek Ramaswamy. I was in the front row with my wife, and Ross Ulbricht's mother was sitting beside my wife. And so um, what they decided was we concentrate the libertarians in one small state. In 20 years, they've had, by their numbers, they've had probably, because libertarians don't like being on lists, so they've had about 7,000 declared libertarians move to New Hampshire, and they figure there's probably another 3,000. So roughly 10,000 new movers have gone to New Hampshire in the last 20 years. They now control much of the legislative agenda, not all of it, but they are controlling much of the legislative agenda. They're the freest state in America, bar none. They have no gun laws. In fact, they had, just as one example, they passed legislation nullifying all federal gun laws. And how they did that is they said that no New Hampshire employee or official, whatever you want to call it, is allowed to assist the feds in enforcing federal gun laws. Okay. Now they've done a whole bunch of other stuff towards school choice and all kinds of stuff there. And they have shown the way how to do this thing. They are probably the freest area in all of the world. I'm guessing. That's probably, somebody can argue that, but I would suspect they are. And so we're trying to duplicate what they do. I mean, I'm shameless about it. We're plagiarizing the best. I think Alex Tilley, the inventor of the Tilley hat, once said, "I only plagiarize the best."
Right.
And that's what we're doing. And we've got the mailing list is building up. We're approaching like 700 people. We've had a few new movers already. We're getting incorporated, but I tell you, legal trying to get legal services in New Brunswick, especially if you're unvaccinated. We could not find any lawyer anywhere in New Brunswick. Nobody could. There were no lawyers willing to take cases. We're just trying to incorporate a simple not-for-profit, and it's been going on for months and months and months.
Wow.
So we need lawyers. Like we need a bunch of lawyers, really tough arse lawyers to come to New Brunswick first. But
Interesting.
that's what we're doing. Look, the idea is concentration. We have
Right.
380,000 voters in the last provincial election. We've elected two back-to-back conservative governments. Okay, and so never had an NDP government, and we're a small state, so small province, so it's much easier. You have more impact. Your vote here, or in New Brunswick, is worth 15 times more than in Ontario, where you got 5 million votes, right? So
Mark,
that's all we're
why
trying to
why
do.
did you pick New Brunswick and not PEI? Isn't PEI an even
Uh,
more apt
well,
target?
it's funny you would say that because years ago, I had this idea that what if we took over PEI? I mean, there's hardly anybody there. We could take the whole thing over, right? It'd be pretty quick. And a friend of mine, Robert Bond, told me about the New Hampshire projects. That's when I started getting interested in it. Well, number one, I was living in New Brunswick, but strategically, New Brunswick is far better than PEI. Why? Because the electricity for PEI comes from New Brunswick. The bridge to PEI ends in New Brunswick. Strategically, it's a real crappy place. It's not big enough. Um, and so New Brunswick has a lot going for it. We have enough of a land mass that you can pretty much do whatever you want. We're also very strategic because to get to Nova Scotia, you got to go through New Brunswick. So in the future, I mean, look, I don't know what's going to happen. My goal would be to get New Brunswick to the point, as Corey Morgan has talked about this, and I'm sure you know who he is. Corey
Yep.
Morgan's book, the Sovereigntist Handbook, talks about how you have to get, before you could ever have a vote on secession for Alberta, you have to create the province that's ready to do it. So you're standing on your own 2 feet, you got your own pension plan, your own police force, you've got your health system is running like a top, people are thinking freedom, then people can start looking to the future and say, what the hell do we need Canada for? I want to do the same thing, but I don't necessarily want to go out of Canada. But the way the trajectory is going right now, I don't see hope for Canada. I really don't. And I think, if we look at the border, let's say Canada got real stupid and tried to ignore a referendum or try to suppress what we were doing. That's a pretty narrow border between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And of course, one of the things that we would do, and this is just to give people the sense of what is possible at the provincial level. Of course, we all know the criminal code is federal. We know gun laws are federal. So what could we do about gun laws? As an example, okay? Because what I want to prove to you is it's not the ability to get things done, it's the will to get it done. Okay. So let's look at New Brunswick. New Brunswick gets, it takes a few years. We got a free province government, and we're interested in maximum freedom. All we have to do is we create a federal or provincial police force, just like Alberta hopefully is going to do. And then we make sure that's running, humming along. Then we start an armed auxiliary force. So anybody without a violent criminal record can join the armed auxiliary, and we will pay every member with one Glock, one AR-15, and 1,000 rounds of ammo a year. How are you going to stop that, feds?
Right.
Can't. Now you've got probably 200,000 armed New Brunswickers, love and freedom. Of course, you got to train them all, okay? So first you would start with former members of Canadian military, ex-police officers. You'd work on that. You'd get a training program developed. You'd have to develop rules of engagement for when you can draw a weapon, when you can fire a weapon. So it'd be very crystal clear. Okay, we don't want. I'm not a big fan of. We felt safe in New Hampshire. Got to tell you, never felt threatened even a little bit. But the idea that somebody can walk in with no training, buy a gun, and walk around with it, Canadians ain't ready for that one. Okay.
Yeah.
But that gives you an example of what we could do to increase freedom in the country. Well, now imagine Canada wants to be totally stupid and try using force against New Brunswick that maybe tries to separate or whatever. They would get a rude surprise. Okay, it's like when I talk to people about New Hampshire, and I talk to them. They got the most machine guns per capita in America. They know how to use them, and they got the most guns. Okay, and because I've got a friend here, so yeah, but they would send in the U.S. military. I say, are you serious? People in caves and in holes in the ground defeated the U.S. military, and you think you're going to go into a state with a culture of freedom that is probably the most heavily armed state, and you're going to really go in and try and kill those people? You're asking for trouble. So that's just one example. Okay.
Right. Well, I love, your thoughts have been and sentiments have been echoing mine lately. I've been thinking about the idea of patriotism, the idea of the nation versus the state. I'm actually reading this book right now, and I recommend you read it because I think it would be right up your alley if you haven't read it already. It's called The Network State, and it's all about this idea of getting past the idea that that nations need to be territorial. Now that we have robust networks, now that we have cryptography and Bitcoin, the author is making the argument that what needs to happen next is essentially what you're doing, which is attracting consenting adults who have the same values, right? And he talks about having the one operating principle, whatever that is, whether it's Bitcoin maximalism or, he's tracking a number of these network states that are attempting to start up. Ones like van life, their thing is just being a vagabond and being into that nomad van life. But the idea is you build up enough critical mass of supporters, of people all bound together by this one ideal or common ideal. They can be in disparate parts of the world, and you start creating, enforcement mechanisms, not based on force, but based on membership to the group. Obviously the group has to have some benefit to its members, so you're voluntarily contributing to it. You start to you have a census on a blockchain that is continually updating, so you can prove how many people you have. And eventually there's like 6 or 7 different phases you go through. The final one is achieving diplomatic recognition. In other words, having enough of a critical mass of people all pulling together in the same direction, each and owning a certain amount of territory. It doesn't have to be contiguous. It can be blocks of land here and there, all connected by the network and by the common purpose. But eventually you get enough people that you're a diplomatic force and you can get diplomatic recognition. And then, that's his idea. So it's got my brain thinking about this idea of maybe the answer isn't trying to confront government and trying to push back on it or change it by getting your people elected or taking over local polities, but maybe it's making government irrelevant by having this separate parallel nation operating within territorial borders that makes the government there irrelevant to you. You could imagine a group of, let's say, anti-vaxxers or vaccine skeptics getting together and saying that this is our one mission. We will not, bodily autonomy is our key thing. You get 2 million people worldwide contributing to a fund on a blockchain, and your benefit of being in a group like that is we bring legal resources to bear whenever a state tries to, whenever one of our members is attacked by a state somewhere for choosing not to be vaccinated. That's the value of being part of that nation. You bring that group of people's resources to bear. So anyways, it's a very interesting book. I'm just getting into the nuts and bolts of how, the technical network that needs to be in place for something like this and to get his idea. But it's really got my brain thinking, because you're right, Canada is dead. I mean, it's probably never really, like, Canada is really a state first and a nation second. It was the state that defined what this nation was right off the bat. I mean, if you look at our southern border, it's not like if you look throughout history and throughout the world, you'll see borders that follow geographical boundaries. They roughly approximate where there was a nation before a state, right? There was a nation of people all from similar ancestry, sharing similar culture and beliefs. And there's usually geographical things that kind of keep that nation together. And so you have this rough border. But in Canada, we have this one straight line, right? It's our nation is basically centered around not America. We're not them. We're something separate. What is that thing that we're separate from? Well, it's a bunch of different things. You got Quebecers, you got First Nations, you got immigrants with bringing all their different values. But the state of Canada determined what our nation was. And it said, this is our tax farm. You're all our tax livestock, and you are under our control. And that's what Canada is. And so there would never, I would argue, there never was anything approximating a nation there, because it was just so diverse in terms of that there was nothing holding it together other than force from this government. And so when you say you're a patriot, I wonder, well, what are you a patriot to? What are you what are you loyal to? Is it the idea of Canada that your tax farmers implanted in you, that, from sea to sea along the 49th parallel, that straight line, that's what you support? But that has always been a mechanism of control, plunder, and conquest on the individual. It's never been anything but. It hasn't been there to serve the people. It's been there to enslave the people. And so, but now I think more and more people are recognizing that and realizing, look, there's clearly a bunch of different peoples within this state, different nations within this state, really. And maybe we need to break it off. And it sounds like you're doing just that.
Well, this is the thing. My first choice is not to break it off. My wish would be that we get to a point where we could, if we chose to. It's like being independent, okay? As long as you're on daddy's credit card, mommy and daddy's credit card, and living in mommy and daddy's basement, you're not independent. But if we got to a point where we had weaned ourselves off of the teats of transfer payments, we could stand on our own 2 feet, we had a dynamic, vibrant economy built on freedom where people wanted to come and live, and looked at it the way people are looking at Argentina, right? Oh my goodness, I got to go to Argentina. That's what I want. Now we
Right.
can go to Ottawa. Somebody, and it wouldn't be me, okay? And I want to be clear, remind me of that. We're not about running candidates. That's not what our mission is, okay? But a free province could go to Ottawa and say, look, we have everything we need for independence, and our people are not going to live as your slaves anymore. Do you want to be continue to be stupid, or do you want to not be stupid, or would you like us to hold a referendum tomorrow? We can do that, okay? Up to you. But you can't hold that, you can't make that threat until you actually can carry it out. When they know in their own minds physical force is not an option, and number two, we have a culture of freedom, right? Going, and you're not buying us off. You're not nothing. You're either going to stop being crazy, or we're going to hold a referendum. What would you like us to do? And so that's my choice. I am all for getting to the point where if we wanted to, we could hold a referendum. I really rather not. I think,
Right.
look, I think what's happened is I think we had a nation at one time. And of course, we can talk about immigration and stuff. We brought in a whole bunch of people who don't share our values. Not the same values that all those people died at Vimy Ridge for or died on Normandy for. No, we we've been bringing in people who hate us. Okay, and so I think, and I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment when Canada shifted, but I got to tell you, as an unvaccinated person who felt compelled to leave Canada for my safety and my wife's safety, um, I I don't even know what to say anymore. I think Canada's over. And I'm trying still, even from here. I'm talking to you from Cuenca, Ecuador, right now. We got out just before Justin Trudeau implemented his travel segregation, and I spent many years, and I still do actually, um, working with Jewish people to try and fight anti-Semitism. And I used to, before COVID, I used to go into Jewish schools, synagogues, and churches, and I would teach mostly Jews about their own forgotten land rights under international law. So I understand how fast a country can go off the rails, and our country is about 10 feet from the bottom of the pit of hell right now. And everything I thought I was serving in the Canadian military and with the United Nations, it's all a lie. We are a serial human rights abuser. We've apologized to the Chinese, the Japanese, the Jews that we kept out during the Holocaust, the natives, and someday, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, some prime minister is going to issue another meaningless apology to what was done to people like us who simply wanted, who believed in the Nuremberg Code, the Declaration, UN Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, who believed in the Criminal Code of Canada about you don't get to touch people without consent. Remember that part? And I think somebody's going to issue an apology one day, and it'll mean as much as the other four are going to. Something has to change. Now, as far as I got to read this book. It'll be really interesting. I think you can do both. I think you walk and chew gum. You
Yeah.
create your international, but what are you going to do if you've got this blockchain thing? How does that help you when the cops come to your door and want to take you to a camp and force you to get vaccinated or put a bullet in your head?
Yeah.
Our premier in New Brunswick, after we left Canada, tried to deny food to unvaccinated people. Do you know what a slippery slope it is? I'm sure you do. From from denying food to people and putting bullets in their head, that is a sharp, slippery slope. That it's like so
Yeah.
close you can't even tell them apart how far it takes to get to that point. That's how much they hated us. And here's the problem: when you can't get a lawyer to represent you, how are you going to stop that? I ask this as a theoretical question, okay, and mainly for New Brunswickers. But let's say that the government of New Brunswick, or even Ontario not as bad, but definitely New Brunswick, if the premier of New Brunswick had signed an order forcing us into camps and shooting us if we refuse, how would we stop it legally? Legally, tell me. Can't get a
Yeah.
lawyer. Now what?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I'll get my guns out. Okay. The purpose of guns is to get to the keep from getting to that point. Okay.
Right.
Gun advocates get this wrong. A little bit of an aside. Gun advocates get this wrong all the time, in my opinion. It's not guns that guarantee freedom. It's culture. Culture
That's right.
guarantees freedom. Okay. The guns are a backup. But the guns, I mean, if you had 200,000 armed people in New Brunswick and half of them were carrying, you ain't messing around with New Brunswickers, okay? You're just not. And guns are the ultimate guarantee, but the way we get there without using the guns is by building from the ground up a culture of freedom. And I think you have to have both. There's nothing wrong with having international presence. It's nothing wrong with having this amazing network of people who could help fund lawsuits. We couldn't get anybody. I couldn't get Rebel News to contact me back. I couldn't even get Look, listen, I got a history in Caledonia. I'm in 2 books. I could not get Rebel Media to even contact me back. I couldn't get lawyers that were on Twitter talking about rights and people I quoted in a report. Okay, what are you going to do? Like, no. So we have to build that culture and be part of that bigger culture as well, because at some point you may have to do what we did,
Yeah.
bail out, you know?
Well, the idea is almost like creating a nation that could defend you against a state, right? I mean, what we're talking about here is defense against the state, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the difference between a state and a regular corporation or nation or organization is that it everything it does is mandatory because it's backed up by a gun. It's backed up by, we will shoot you dead if you don't pay your taxes. I mean, there's a few steps, but if you refuse and you defend yourself from the confiscation, I mean, guys with guns will eventually come. And this goes all the way down the line, even to something as innocuous as manufacturing and selling lawn darts, right? I mean, you can, or baby walkers, or raw milk. Yeah, exactly.
Raw milk.
Will
How
kill
dare
you.
you?
Yeah, because and so yes, getting people to understand this is important. I think more and more they do. I think COVID might have been a wake up call for a lot of people to understand. Oh wow, like this is happening real quick, and there's nothing I can do about it. And recognize and looking for solutions. This sounds like a great solution. The idea that you have enough people there with the same mind that value freedom, that when the state comes a call in and tries to impose their will, there's pushback, there's consequences to that for the state. The state is like any predator. It likes an easy target. If you are downtown Edmonton and you are, no one's going to attack. Like, I'm safe. I can walk downtown Edmonton. None of these junkies and lowlifes are going to come close to me because they know that there's going to be consequences, right? They want an easy target. They want someone that's going to bend over real quick, that's going to comply, that's going to be scared, that whatever. And the state's no different. If you simply comply, if you don't push back, if there's, this is why peaceful civil disobedience has always been so powerful, because it reveals the violence of the state to everyone. I'm disobeying, and now we're seeing billy clubs come out and horses trampling people and just horrific things happening to peaceful people. There's the violence of the state exposed, and that's a consequence that the state now suffers as a result. And so imagine you get enough freedom lovers around who say no in a peaceful way, in a way that makes the state look bad. Well, that is a huge strength. That's a huge way to protect against incursions of the state. So, Mark, how can people get involved? Find out, do they have to move to a specific area in New Brunswick? Is it anywhere?
No, we have a moving coordinator who's working out on mapping. We have a whole network of freedom pods, not our network, but see, just to be clear, our mission is to get people in New Brunswick. We're recruiters and we get them there. We don't run candidates. We don't endorse candidates. We do exactly what the New Hampshire people do. So once they get to New Brunswick, we can hook them up with different freedom pods, in their area, and then they can go from there. We certainly have ideas. If somebody wants some ideas for example, the gun rights stuff, we're happy to give advice on that. But that's our mission, is very limited to getting there. So we focus on what we're good at. And so I'm doing a Q&A every 2 weeks, and I'm doing one tonight, actually. And the schedule is in our calendar at nbfree.ca. And you can come in and ask me any questions that you want. We take questions from newbies first, and then we'll talk about anything else, including Javier Milei's victory tonight, I'm sure. And so you can go to nbfree.ca. Take some time. You can read my bio and see the history that I have defending freedom, and watch Derek Prue, our New Hampshire liaison guy, who's amazing. And it's give it some thought. I mean, you don't have to do it right away. You know, right now we're about to register. Well, I'm hoping we're going to get this corporation done soon, and then we'll be looking for people to commit, just like they did in New Hampshire. So yeah, okay, I'm ready. I will come to New Hampshire once we get so many people that are
Right.
interested. So
And
it's fun.
Mark, any plans to have like a pork fest analog
Yeah,
in New Brunswick, someplace
yeah.
that us liberty lovers can come and party for a little bit and enjoy some fellowship?
Well, it's funny you say that. Our mascot or you know, we love the porcupine on the logo. So I ripped off the logo as much as I could. They know, right? And but I decided to use the New Brunswick official bird called the black-capped chickadee. So our pork fest will be called Chick Fest, and it's
Ah,
so deliciously politically incorrect, as a
nice.
friend of mine from a refugee from Ontario once said. So that will happen. We're just taking this one step at a time. We're not in a huge hurry. It's funny you say people are more awake. I mean, I had a serious discussion after I got back from New Hampshire. I had a very serious discussion with the two people who are going to be directors, and I said, "Do we have enough time to even do this?" I said, "Because it took 20 years to get 10,000 people, and America's 10 times as big. So theoretically, according to Dennis Pratt of the New Hampshire Free State Project, it's going to take you 200 years, Mark." I said, "Well, first of all, we don't have any choice because we can't get green cards." So, and David, who's going to be one of the directors, he said, "Mark, the thing that we have in Canada that they did not have in New Hampshire when they started is that many people are aware of their lack of freedom now,
Yeah,
and how it's getting worse." So he, because I asked him, I said, "Do you want to shut this thing down or do you want to keep going?" He said, "No, I think we should keep going, and because we don't need that many people. Look, if we had 10,000 people come to New Brunswick, that'd be amazing, you know." So it's
absolutely.
funny. I asked, you know, our New Hampshire guy Derek. I said, "What do you mean? How many people did you get?" And then I said, "How do you control a state with 10,000 new people?" And he said, "It's easy." He says, "The people who move for freedom are very active.
Yeah,
They're the ones that knock on doors, they raise money, and they're going to political rallies. They're influencing the politicians. And this is not about even starting a party, but if somebody wants to do it, go ahead." And that's what they do in New Hampshire. They don't have a free state party. They just
right,
influence the Democrats and Republicans. So
right,
yeah,
right.
I think it's the only viable peaceful solution. I think you national election isn't going to solve this. Okay, and I'll
Yeah,
hear people talk. Well, you know, civil war. Don't you dare talk to me about civil war unless you're prepared to come to New Brunswick and build some freedom. All right, I don't want to hear about it.
yeah,
There are political options, but it means most people do not want to pay a price for freedom. I'm looking for the lions. I'm not looking to wake up sheep. I'm looking for the lions who say, "Yeah, I want to be free. Here's a solution. Let's go."
right, right. I love it. Well, and it's a great strategy because there was a research done, I think in 2012, and I've quoted this quite a bit. But it was sociological research that found that there's a tipping point where change is inevitable,
Mhm.
and that's around 10%. When you hit 10% of a population that adopts an unshakable belief, then the rest of the population tends to adopt because they just kind of go along with it, right? And so most people are just kind of go along to get along. If you want to disparage them, you could call them sheep, but I think the sheep are good people by and large. They just don't have time or the bandwidth to, they just comply with everything because it's easier, and they comply and comply until they die, basically, until things get so bad that they can no longer comply. Well, you start to congregate enough non-compliant people, the compliant people will kind of fall in line with that philosophy. Now, especially if you make it fun, if you're having chick fests out there, especially if you can attract some actual chicks. I mean, you might get a few libertarian, yeah, I've been to a lot of libertarian parties, they're sausage fests. I'm not going to lie, but I think we can make them fun. I think we could attract some chicks. We might
The
attract
first
more people to our movement. Hey,
the first person I met at Porkfest, the first person I talked to, I'm waiting to check in, and there's this small woman there, kind of attractive, and she's got a Glock on her hip that's bigger than she is.
Wow.
And I said, "Can I take a picture of you?" She said, "Nope, nope, don't want my picture taken." Like, funny, but there are a lot of women at Pork Fest. I'm telling you,
Yeah, well,
and
that's the
it
thing because it's fun and it's
yeah,
tangible, right? You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
libertarians live in this abstract world of ideas and arguments on Facebook and podcasts like we're doing. But you know, when you make liberty tangible and you see a bunch of like-minded people there congregating together, having fun together, partying together, having each other's backs, building community together. Now suddenly, um, you know, people who don't live in abstract uh, reality like a lot of us guys tend to do start to come out of the woodwork. And you know, I think so. I think what you're doing is great, guys. I'm going to be putting links below here. I'm not sure if this podcast is going to go. We're recording on Monday, November the 20th. I know you're having an info session tonight. I'm going to try to get this out in time. If not, go to the website and make sure you sign up and check out info sessions and really give this a shot. Is there any way we can support you? You know, if we're not ready to move out there, what can we do to help?
But you know what? Just get on the mailing list. That's how we're getting in touch with people. It's not segmented at all. It's
Yeah.
our only way to, we're just trying, building awareness, and, we're doing it. Oh, by the way, we are also listed on the free-communities.org website, which is the Free Cities Foundation.
Oh, okay.
We met with them online, and we're on the map now. And there's a link on, if you go to nbfree.ca, you can see us on the map. And so, I sign up. Just sign up. Come to a Q&A. If you have any questions, like, I'm very accessible. You want to insult me by email? It's mark@nbfree.ca. Doesn't bother me. And you got questions, and sometimes it's great to just talk about ideas. It's kind of funny. I was trying to have a discussion online with some free staters about roads, and because the typical ad, well, who will build the roads? And of course, they laugh at you, like the Free Staters laugh. Oh, what a dumb question! I said, well, think about this. I've been arrested 5 times on a public road. Would I be arrested if they were private? How are you going to guarantee privacy when you've got overhead cameras monitoring your license plates everywhere? Have you thought about that? And they, some of these free staters and some of these libertarians, they're just as dogmatic as everybody else, right? So, but these are things you got to think about. That's why you have people with different experiences and different thought processes, and then you listen to that. I'd rather live in a place where nobody's monitoring where I'm going and nobody can arrest me on a private road. That's what I would.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know how you make all that, but it's just one example that I don't like to call myself Big L libertarian. I'm not even sure if I'm a libertarian or not. I think I might be, at least partly, but I don't, I'm not sure. Like, I just want freedom, as
Yeah.
maximum freedom. I tell people all the time, I want to reimagine governance through the lens of freedom in every
Mm.
aspect possible. So
Right.
thank you.
Right.
I haven't done that yet. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the interest. It's an honor, and I really appreciate your time. So thank you.
Well, I
If you want to
appreciate
reach
your
out anytime.
time and your patience sticking with me. For those of you out there, I am time zone ignorant. Apparently, I totally blotched time zone. So he was ready to go at 7 a.m. my time, and I thought we were going to record at like 11 a.m. my time. So
You know how
uh,
you fix that? By the way, you know how you fix that? If you go into your time settings, at least on Windows, you can actually set different clocks. So I know exactly. I can pull this up and I can tell exactly what time it is, because sometimes when you have daylight savings times, if I'm in the wrong, I actually shoot. I think I'm wrong today. I have different time zones. I can have Atlantic time, I can have Eastern Standard, and then I'm running on just plain old Eastern. Okay, so
yeah,
or Eastern Daylight. Like, I got 3 time zones sometimes that I got to deal with.
right,
So
right.
it's a pain in the butt. So I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
No problem. No problem.
Okay. Well, anyways, guys, the links will be down below. I'm going to be going and signing up for that mailing list right away because I want to stay involved
Thank
and
you.
informed and know what's going on out there. You know, I may have to flee to New Brunswick at a given any given moment, so I want to make sure I know I have a safe haven to flee to. And Mark, thanks for all the work you're doing. God bless creating a safe haven out there. I'll be watching you with very closely. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Nice talking to you.